Is true. My name is Dennis Caro. Been the host of What is True for 28 years now, maybe more. Need to go back and look that up, I guess. We've been on for a while. The response, those that have called me, I just can't tell you the appreciation, and I'm going to take a minute to say it. Several that had called have been getting up on Sunday mornings at 8 o'clock and watching this program for well over 20 years. I remember during the pandemic having the blessing of doing a memorial service to a couple of ladies that are in a small community outside this viewing area or inside the viewing area, a bit remote, and did a funeral for the sisters. They died within a week of each other, and they had the memorial service there, and I was the preacher for them because of the circumstance that they were living in, and this was their opportunity to study God's Word as they worshiped in the circumstance they were in. Being relevant. Remember, we talked last week, asking, seeking, knocking. And then I did some asking, seeking, and knocking for help to go to Africa for the conference at the college that we've got rented, and just going to be an incredible opportunity to preach the simplicity of the gospel of Christ. We are in our marriage season in our country, in our June, July area, where we begin to see holy matrimony, people embarking on their relationship. And we're going to talk about the perfect marriage and also discuss a little bit about expectations versus the reality. And so those of you that are going to prepare for marriage, someone call them and have them get to the TV real quick or go to the YouTube channel. There's going to be a period of adjustment. As you can see here, there are some major issues that have to be resolved. This is correct, by the way. So you see the period of adjustment is when you live with someone, all the intricacies of life, me, my wife, you begin to learn how that you have distinctions and differences in all the little things. And those things are really going to have to be dealt with, otherwise people find themselves infuriated. But great expectations, what do you hope to get out of marriage? That's one of those, wait a minute, we ran right past, there was a professor at college that explained to me regarding you can take the jar, and when you have the intimate relationship with your spouse in the first year or two, you can put a coin in the jar the first couple of years, and then it might take you 20 years to take them all out if you reverse the order after that. So he's saying the children would come in, and that's what we know. And so there is this grace of life, marriage. That's exactly, in fact, Peter uses the very language that we are heirs together in the grace of life. Now, we know that in heaven, we're not married or given in marriage, but we know that there is this relationship that is heirs together in the grace of life that help us get to that eternal home. And so much so is it in trying to describe the nature of the relationship. It becomes complex. In a commentary with Adam Clarke, he's talking about the two becoming one flesh. These two shall be one flesh, shall be considered as one body, having no separate independent rights, privileges, cares, concerns, each being equally interested in all the things that concern the marriage state. That really, Adam Clarke did a pretty good job of trying to infuse into that the components, because the interest, and you say, well, I'm interested in my wife or my spouse or her needs, and yes, you are, but as a man to be the head of the household, with that responsibility, he begins to look in the fact that as one flesh, he has responsibilities, and he's interested in the institution, if you will. I don't think that's a good word anymore that people use, but the state, you institutionalized in marriage. We try to use terminology to get it a little bit more friendly, but you're in a covenant relationship with someone else. What marriage is all about is truly learning how to expect the unexpected and to live in joy. 1 Peter 3 and verse 7, husbands likewise dwell with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife as the weaker vessel, as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Now, 1 Peter 3 verse 7 is that note to the husband. There are messages to the wife in the first 6 verses, and it is very paradoxical, if you will. It seems to be in contrast to what would bring what you want. But just as we talked about asking, seeking, and knocking, that is becoming willing to serve is the key. And in the marriage relationship, that explodes. Because love is not something where you give love and then suddenly I've given half my love and I've got 50% less. You give it all and you get it over and over again in response to you. So how do we get there? How can we get to that perfect marriage? Well, we got to have a bit of an understanding of what's going on, and hopefully we'll come to realize like the mystery of love making. I'm not talking about the physical act. We're talking about agape, sacrificial. That's a sacrificial love. That's when husbands are told to agape their wives. Women are told to learn to love their husbands. Now, isn't it interesting that the Bible, when we read that word love, and it means so many different things in our vernacular, that it's the same. The word's so powerful that it can be applied in different ways. Self-sacrificial love, man. Brotherly love, learning to love, woman. And when we come to the word eros, where does that fit in? In sacrifice and learning to love. Well, it's obviously helping us to manage the emotion. That is, how we can realize if you have eros, that is just the lustful desire, that physical desire, in the absence of agape or philo, you got nothing. And that's when people discover, if they got married for 3 letters instead of 4, then it's what I'm saying is that it's coming to the place where we now are ready to realize what makes love. Yeah, there you go. Becoming perfect in marriage. Ephesians 5, beginning in verse 22. We're going to read through the entire text there, 22 through 23. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is head of the wife, as also Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as Christ is subject, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify her and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself, a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. So husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. For we are members of his body and of his flesh and of his bones. For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall be one flesh. I've joined to be a part of his flesh and his bones. That is, to be a part, one flesh. Then he turns and says, this is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. We could understand the perfection in that moment of marriage where everything is right. And then he says, the mystery concerning Christ and the church, but nevertheless let each one in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. The Bible becomes very academic when it comes to this part of talking to the husband and wife. And the husband makes a deliberate choice to sacrifice. The wife makes a deliberate choice to submit to his sacrifice, which, I mean, that would be that, well, he's giving it all for me. The blessings and what we learn in that is how, you might say, the circle of life, of love and of a relationship sustains itself. And when you see in the church, the mystery in the church, where it says, the strong bear the infirmities of the weak and not to please ourselves. So as life goes on in that marriage relationship, talking about in creation, she was called a helpmeet in the King James, a helper suitable for him. And that meant that they would become a couple, but they would serve a function as one, sanctified. We got to see it, the sanctification, the setting aside, the preparing of ourselves. It will enable us to stay pure and true and holy. Submit, suffering, sacrifice. I do remember talking to the young men as we have our sessions before marriage. And I spend a little bit of time trying to talk him out of being married. And not that I'm really talking him out of getting married, I'm showing him that if you go into this and you think that it's going to be about what you can get, then you are looking at it from the wrong side of the table, and the fact is that you're going to make a very difficult life for yourself. Because that's not what the intent of this text is. It's telling us, yes, you got to take responsibility. And that's the real deal. And that's where love's reality needs to come into us all. We can talk about love, but love's reality is the setting aside. C.S. Lewis says this about that. He says, the quieter love. Love as distinct from being in love is not merely a feeling, it's a deep unity maintained by the will and deliberately strengthened by habit. Spouses can retain this love even when each would easily, if they allowed themselves to be in love with someone else. Being in love first moved them to promise fidelity. It's this quieter love that enables them to keep the promise. It is this love that the engine of marriage is run. Being in love was the explosion that started it. In other words, the emotional aspect of love solidified into the rock of a relationship that can't be broken. And it's a quieter love, is what he's referring to it as one that is at peace and brings peace. Blessed are the peacemakers, for these shall be called the children of God. Well, husbands seeking to raise children or to exemplify that moral character, are you a peacemaker? When love gets to the end of sacrifice, it lifts up its head and says, it's worth it. It says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Even when it seemingly gives its very life through sacrifice, the very essence of life. Because, and this is one thing that has been testified time and again, we give it all, and what do we receive? It returns to us 100-fold. We're not talking about money. We're talking about sanctification, submitting, suffering, sacrifice. It's inclusive of everything that is at our disposal, that we can offer, that we can bring. And the unique aspect, here's the deal to all of us. You get to that place and you look at that person that you've made that commitment to and you go, well, I'm not sure I love you anymore. You're wrong in the fact that you have made an emotional decision that should be an intellectual one. Love is a choice. It's an intellectual decision that you make. You weigh all the components, but the command to love is there. The optimism that you bring to the table in 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter, believes, hopes, endures. It never ceases or never fails. Love never fails. That's why when we talk about reaching for that perfect marriage, it's not about finding somebody that's perfect. We got to get to the part about the marital problems. I mean, what's happening? Well, that is a little easier than maybe to talk about than it is to resolve. Understanding the source of marital problems, discussing unexpected behavior. Well, you know, I think that picture is indicative of the way that it looks. I mean, and you see stuff in the sink and flick. You know, we talked about at the very first, you got those little adjustment places. Well, what if those little adjustment phases and they were communicated to, but nothing ever changes, and then, you know, you still see the wet towels on the floor or the cups in the sink or whatever it is that, you know, you got two lines down there to put your own thing in there. But that is life together and the various things that go into it. And the proverb helps us out, the continual dripping on a rainy day and a contentious woman are alike. I say that with a grin because that's not funny. But what it is showing us is what we already know. In the midst of a relationship where we're having struggles, well, guess what? You got a contentious dripping and a contentious woman are alike. Well, where'd the contention come from? A contentious man kindles up strife. Now, I'm not blaming the men. I'm not doing that. I'm saying this. We're pointing to a problem, the source of marital problems, and it is in the manner of communication. And so what we got to do is get a grip on our manner of communication, and then how do we communicate? And I think, you know, the pictures kind of tell it when we scream and, you know, we've got the weapon in our hand. In other words, body language can tell you a lot. If you are self-seeking, this is where you can know. James 3. If you have self-seeking in your heart, this is when life becomes out of control. You're no longer making that suffering, sacrificial desire to meet the need of another. The wisdom that's from above is pure and peaceable and gentle and willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits. If you have self-seeking in your heart, confusion and every evil thing is there. You see, when we begin to communicate that way or fail to communicate and be peaceable and gentle and loving and willing to yield, then the next thing you know, we begin to push away emotionally. And when that occurs, we have becoming angry and sinning. and we let the sun go down on our wrath and come up on our wrath, and the next thing you know, we are a angry, bitter spouse. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. This three-step solution to problem solving, and this is that one verse that I lean on every potential couple getting married, to take these three steps. Be angry and don't sin. If you get angry, don't go too far. Communicate what it is that you're struggling with. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. There's a timetable. Cut off the argument. When the sun goes down, so does the discussion. What about the next day? Repeat steps 1 and 2, because that's how life will be. But when we practice it this way, and when we do be angry but limit our anger, and we communicate the things that we struggle with, then we can find the path of peace. Without it, we can't. So, unexpected, unmet desires, this is where the ultimate reason for the dissolution of one's marriage is feeling their needs are not being met and seeking fulfillment of those needs somewhere else. That's when the tragedy begins to show up. And the unexpected, one of the most unexpected things within a marriage is when one feels isolated or lonely. It happens in every respect, or can happen. It doesn't have to. But this is a part of either your personal processing of life, and also when differences or distinctions or people are going through different struggles in their life. Remember this. Communicate. Choose and communicate. Be patient. Don't let the sun go down. And recognize the need for intimacy. And that's where we have to define in all of these things. Physical, emotional. How can this be communicated? Well, I'll tell you this, men and women are often different. I still remember distinctly after a million years of marriage that 30 years into it, my wife tells me one morning, "Thank you for spending time with me and talking with me last night." You see what she needed? I didn't know. That's because I'm the guy. And we need to recognize the need for intimacy, and the nature of that intimacy can just simply be that you got somebody in your life that's there, ready, willing, and wanting to listen. And friends, I don't have time to read through Proverbs 5:15 through 23, but immorality never satisfies. It takes, it never gives back. Society's illusion into the sexual things that draw people away from the intimacy of marriage and the beauty of that relationship into pornography and vile things that are not according to God's will, and can destroy the blessing of the marriage bed and even the perception of the beauty that is there, but you can't see it because you've defiled it with the world. The divine order, 2 key words: love and respect. We read them. Husbands love, wives respect. Somehow in that process, y'all can have that discussion. What does it mean? What does it look like? And do it as long as you both shall live. Considering being stuck in marriage because God's law governing divorce, in contrast to the blessed state of matrimony through God's divine design. That's what we're talking about. You're not stuck in a marriage. You are blessed in marriage. It's my attitude toward the institution itself is honorable. That is, I recognize marriage, and mine included, and the ability to adapt to change, because they'll come. It might be that your spouse has a disability or a diagnosis, and it changes everything about the formation of your relationship. My willingness to make sacrifice, Acts 20:35, it's more blessed to give than to receive. To have the blessed marriage, then go for it. Do what God says. And here's the thing that we're going to conclude with, that we know, and that is that love is as strong as death. When we lose a loved one, we don't suddenly love them less. And sadly, we often don't calculate how much we do love. No, the truth is, in our lives, in our hearts, that our love is made stronger. Our heart yearns for more, and our burning desire is for their presence. And love is as strong as death, and that's what we hold to as we enter into that relationship of marriage. The Song of Solomon, the power of love and the power to overcome. Love is as strong as death. And don't forget, it includes the cruelty of jealousy. Love and jealousy are two distinct characteristics that drive our emotions. The word for jealousy comes from the root word for passion, rivalry, or zeal. The emotion can be torturous, defined as burning in the heart that reaches the deepest inner part of our being. The point we want to draw from this passage is that true love cannot be extinguished. It does not fail. The qualities listed in 1 Corinthians 13, 1 through 8, that's the only way love will have purpose and meaning. What to expect? It's not a 50-50 thing. Success in your marriage will not depend upon the perfection of your spouse, but the perfection of your commitment to them and to the Lord. The ultimate act is the gift of mercy we extend to offer someone something that they do not deserve. Giving up your intent to hurt another, you seek to build. You become heirs together in the grace of life. Thank you so much for joining me for today's program. May God richly bless you in your marriage, in your life. If we can help you in any way, join us at the Little Rock Church of Christ. Go to our website,